The Illini men's basketball social media team dropped a first look for Lucas Morillo, and this one leaves me with some questions.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome all to another edition of Locked On Illini. Thank y'all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Sports Network the number one sports network in the world. My name is Sonny Verma, your host here at Locked On, where, of course, I bring you coverage daily. So if you're an Illini fan and if you've stumbled across this for the very first time, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit the like button as well. Speaking of things to like or maybe not like, as you guys know, if you follow the social media team, they've been doing a fantastic job. The Illini men's basketball, basically, we've got a ton of newcomers on this basketball team, and what they've done is every few days, maybe once a week, they'll release maybe a minute, 60 seconds to 90 seconds of a highlight of a newcomer on this basketball team. What I've done on this show is I've watched that highlight reel with you guys and kind of critiqued it and gave my thoughts as we were watching together. And I wanted to do that for this very episode as well. Again, it was, I think, Wednesday night that the Illini men's basketball team released the footage of Lucas Morillo. But I'll be honest with you, I recorded an entire segment of us watching it, but it was a lot of dead air. And so I decided to re-record it. There's just not much in that video that I saw from Morillo. I think all you saw was 6 or 7 jump shots, maybe 2 or 3 drives, but even they were not very intensive. It didn't look like it was in any sort of hardcore scrimmage. And so when it comes to Lucas Morillo, it's not about whether he can shoot or not. He's a fine shooter. And it's if you've been following Illini basketball, you can understand kind of where there might be concern. I've talked about it on this show. I've talked about it in the Talk Illini Discord. Lucas, obviously, he's been hurt in this past offseason, and he hasn't been able to work out with the team as much as some of the new guys. And so now there seems to be a little bit more concern on what his role on this upcoming basketball team is going to look like. Now, I want to preface all this, right, by saying Lucas comes in as the number 50th ranked recruit in the 2026 cycle. In years past, he would be the crown jewel of the recruiting class. And so this is how far Brad Underwood has brought this program to the point where now Lucas is a kid who may not make that top 8 rotation if things, play out the way that they might. Lucas is 6'8", about 190 pounds. So he's got the size. And what I've always liked about Lucas is if you watched him in the FIBA tournament, which I talked about here on the show, I like that he was trusted at the end of the games. I think he was the lowest ranked guy on the U.S. basketball team, and yet he was in at the end of the games. And what that tells me is that the head coach, I believe it was Dusty May, right? Dusty May got to spend a week with these guys, run practices, have them run through drills. And what he saw from that point was, hey, Lucas, I think I can trust to play at the end of games. And to me, that was a huge positive. And that had me excited. He's a guy who I don't think he does necessarily any one thing very well, but I think he does a lot of things pretty good. And I thought there was a role for that on this basketball team. He's not a guy who I think in any sort of ways has one skill that could make him a no-doubt starter. But to me, he was the guy that, hey, if your shooting guard needs a couple spare minutes or if he's in foul trouble, bring in Lucas. If David Mirković gets into foul trouble, bring Lucas in. He was a guy who I think could give you minutes anywhere from the 1 through 4. And especially with that size, that's something that you really wanted to, you can take advantage of. But as I mentioned, there's been buzz over the offseason. He's a little behind when it comes to his workouts in the offseason, just kind of catching up to the rest of the team. There's rumors out there that Lincoln Williams has kind of passed Lucas by when it comes to the spot in the rotation. But, obviously Quentin Coleman is on his own level. But now when I watch this video, and I recommend all of you guys watch this video as well, because I'm very curious on your thoughts. I want to know if you share the same thing as I do. None of these plays seem like they're super intense. And so for me, the question still relies, is he healthy or not. Now, I want to be nice to Lucas in the sense where what he does really well on the basketball court isn't really highlight-worthy material, right? The fact that I think he's a plus defender, I mean, it's hard to show that in a 60-second highlight clip. The fact that I think he's just a good glue guy, maybe a connector type of player, you can't really record 60 to 80 seconds worth of a guy getting the ball and making the right pass to somebody else. That's just not going to quench the thirst of these rabid Illini fans. And so that's why I am giving him the benefit of the doubt. But I can't, if I've got to be honest with you guys, and I will be, any concerns I had coming into this highlight video, I don't think anything has been erased in any sort of way. I'm very curious to see what kind of role Lucas is going to have on this team, because if you think about it, like, he's more talented than some of the other freshmen I've talked about. He was more highly rated than a guy like Landon Davis, who, now that David Mirković is out for a bit, and again, we don't know the timeline or the extent of that injury, we've got minutes to be given at that 4 spot, and there is no natural backup 4. So there's the plan probably to play a smaller lineup. You can have Jake Davis and Andrej Stojakovic be your forwards while you have Tomislav Ivica as your center. But I really like the idea that you use a guy like Morillo for 10, 15 minutes at the 4 spot. So that's why I hope, because when it comes to injury, his injury is supposedly a back injury. And look, as someone who's dealt with back problems myself, I know how concerning that could be. And so what is the ceiling and the bottom, the basement to his role on this basketball team is one that I'm just trying to pull my hair, trying to figure out. He could be the ultimate Swiss Army knife on this team, a guy who can do the things that Jake Davis does when Jake Davis is not on the court. He could, again, he's ranked in the top 50, right, in the 2026 class. He's come in with a decent amount of hype. I just wish in this highlight reel, and again, maybe it's because of what a highlight reel is, it's like I didn't want to see jump shots. I don't need to see jump shots. Even the layups, I think there's like 2 or 3 layups where he drives to the rim. They didn't seem like they were super intensive drives to the rim. And so for me, I can't help but just question, how healthy is he? Is he fully at 100% at this point? You saw a couple of plays involved were with David Mirković. So again, those were from a couple of weeks ago. And again, have we kind of graduated from that point? Now, is he healthier from when he was back then? I don't know. But I wish I had something more positive to say in regards to Lucas, at least this video. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Did you see something differently than I did? Have you heard something differently than I did? What do you predict Lucas Morillo's role on this basketball team is going to be? Because quite honestly, I can't figure it out. Since 1986, the game has been creating classic college hats that fans are proud to wear. Whether you're an alumnus, a current student, season ticket holder, or simply someone who never misses a game, a great college hat is more than just apparel. It's a way to represent your school wherever you go. This year, the game is celebrating its 40th anniversary by giving fans a chance to save on some of the most iconic college hats. If you've been thinking about replacing an old favorite or adding a new one to your collection, now is the perfect time. Just for a second, close your eyes. Think about your favorite hat that you have. Think about how it represents your school, the favorite team, or some of the best sports memories that you might have. Now, tell me why. Why was that one your go-to hat? What special memory did you have with that hat? And here's your chance to get a new one at the game. With hundreds of officially licensed college hats to choose from, you'll find the perfect fit for game day every day. Don't miss the chance to celebrate 40 years of the game with 40% off your entire order. Visit thegamecaps.com and use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's thegamecaps.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Celebrate 40 years of the game with 40% off. But don't wait. This anniversary offer won't last forever. And welcome back. All right, this is the Friday show, so let's bring back a little bit more positive energy to this episode. I want to talk about Quentin Coleman Jeremy Woo of ESPN wrote, I think he was just dropping notes about 2027 NBA draft prospects and 2028 NBA draft prospects. And one guy he did mention was the Illini freshman. We know that scouts are already watching, and why not? After what he did over essentially the last calendar year, you have to understand why. And, you preface this by, look, I know young, hotshot freshmen, immediately you're going to think about the Keaton Wagler season. And no, Quentin Coleman's not going to be the next Keaton Wagler. That's going to be very unfair comparison for him and every other freshman that we have down the road. But the thing is, this Illinois basketball team's not going to need Coleman to do that. And after you read what Woo has to say about him, and again, please check out the article, I think that, with the uncertainty that is David Mirković's health, well, what if this is the exact type of scenario that Quentin Coleman can come in and be the surprise of the Illini basketball team next season? Because I do think that there's an environment situation right now that's helping him maybe become the type of player that he's capable of becoming, and maybe the next one and done for the orange and blue. Okay, so what was this article about, right? This isn't simply just Illinois fans or media getting excited about a freshman. According to Jeremy Woo, it's NBA scouts who are already watching Coleman very closely after what he did this past spring and summer. As you know, Coleman played for Team USA at the Under-18 FIBA AmeriCup. He was invited to the CP3 camp. He went to Nike Academy. And apparently, in every single one of those environments, Coleman played very well. And I do think that's significant because those are opportunities where you're playing against some really high level players and you're being evaluated by people who aren't particularly concerned by what kind of recruiting ranking that you have. What they're looking for is NBA traits. And apparently, Quentin did a really good job of showing them exactly that. But, I did want to mention on Team USA, there's one thing that jumped off the table to everybody, and that's including his biggest Illini fans. 11.4 rebounds per game. Keep in mind, Quentin Coleman is a guard, and yet he led the entire AmeriCup in rebounding. Let me repeat that. A guard led the entire tournament at 11.4 rebounds per game. That should tell you what kind of player he is. And again, I don't necessarily care much about the 11.4 rebounds because Illinois all their guards are going to rebound. They don't need to grab 11 rebounds every single night, but it is a part of the scheme that Illinois tries to do. But none of that is the point. What the point is what rebounding can tell you about a player. In this particular manner, a guard, right? You don't accidentally average 11 rebounds per game. That is effort. That's you deciding that, hey, I want to help the team in any way I can, and I'm going to go up after every rebound and grab every single one that I can. That's great anticipation. That's you willing to be physical. And quite honestly, that's just you being able to understand where that basketball is going. And those are traits that should translate to the collegiate level. We can also mention that Coleman also averaged 11.2 points per game during that tournament, shooting 40% from the field. Offensively, when you come to those numbers, it looks like there's development still to come. Obviously, he just killed it offensively in his senior year in high school. So we'll kind of see where his collegiate performance ends up being. But just remember, he's a freshman. But to me, I'm not as concerned about the offensive side. For me, I love seeing what he was able to do on the rebounding angle, because that tells me that he's already got a skill that even if he's not ready to contribute as much on offense, that he can contribute right away in dominant minutes. I do think he's going to be a guy who plays 20, 25 plus minutes a game. And that's a way that he's going to be able to stay on the floor. Now, we can also talk about, when it comes to Coleman's role on this basketball team. The good thing is you've got, hopefully David Mirković. You're going to have Andrej Stojakovic, Tomislav Ivica, Stefan Vox. You're not going to necessarily have to manufacture touches just for Quentin. Those other guys, they can create the offense. Coleman doesn't need to come to Champaign thinking, hey, I need to get 15 shots a night. Coleman can do a lot of things. He can defend, he can rebound, he can run, he can make that extra pass. Just when the pass comes to you for an open three, just make sure you make it. And according to Wu, well, his competitiveness and his tenacity were among the top things that really stood out at the Nike Academy. And that's how a freshman is going to get minutes on a veteran team. You make yourself impossible to take off the court. And then we can talk about, how things can snowball. A coach can say, I trust him defensively, so I'm going to play him 15 minutes. And then he starts rebounding, and now it's 18 minutes. And then he starts to knock down some three-point shots. Now you're comfortable playing him 20-plus minutes. And then you realize, wait, he can actually handle the basketball pretty well too. And now you can give him pick and roll possessions. And suddenly it's January, and the freshman that you expected to be a complementary piece on this potential Final Four basketball team is one that's playing over 25 minutes a night. And by the way, NBA scouts are going to be sitting courtside watching him and taking notes. And I think that's a path that I can absolutely see for a guy like Quentin. Not necessarily day one, give him the basketball and let him become Keaton Wagler, but instead maybe earn minutes by doing positive things on the basketball court and let the offensive role find him. Which, again, how that happens is going to kind of depend on David Mirković, because that's where the conversation, I think, kind of gets interesting. We spent the offseason talking about Mirković potentially becoming the Illini offensive engine, right? And again, that's not just from me. That's the buzz from other sources. Kevin Sweeney recently talked about it. Mirković being the number one power forward in all of college basketball. And, specifically Illinois, the head coaches have discussed putting the ball in David's hands more. We know how talented Mirk is, but we still have this injury uncertainty. And I'm not going to sit here and speculate exactly what his availability is going to look like, because we don't know. And we probably won't know until Brad Underwood meets the media and lets us know. But, hopefully Mirk gets completely healthy and this entire conversation becomes irrelevant. That's clearly the best case scenario. But if the injuries do linger, and if Mirković misses time, or maybe, he's ready to come back, but Illinois has to manage him a little bit more, well, then those possessions have to go somewhere. And that's where somebody like Quentin Coleman really becomes interesting. Not because he's going to replace David Mirković. Of course, they're completely different kind of players. I'm just talking about offensive responsibility. If Mirković was supposed to become one of your primary creators and suddenly he's unavailable, I don't think you necessarily have to replace all of that creation with one player. I think you can just redistribute it. Maybe Stojakovic gets a few more touches. Maybe Vox handles the ball more. Maybe Tomislav becomes more involved as the big man doing the playmaking. Or maybe Quentin Coleman suddenly gets opportunities that weren't necessarily going to be part of the original plan. And stuff like that could accelerate the development for this really talented freshman. Another part of the scouting report from the article is Wu described Coleman as unselfish, and he continues to be, he continues to flash his ability to be a decision maker. And we know that's huge in a Brad Underwood offense. You want somebody who has very high basketball IQ. That's literally something that Brad scouts for. We're not talking about somebody whose NBA case is entirely dependent on their athletic ability or scoring 20 points per game. There's a broader skill set here. He's a smooth mover. He can cover ground. He can compete defensively. I already talked about his rebounding prowess. And again, you talk about his shooting. He shot 38.5% from three in the EYBL. And that's an important number because you start stacking all these skills together. Well, you have a guard who can shoot, who can rebound, who can defend. And more interesting, you have a guard who does all of those pretty well. And we're getting somewhere. Because how many players have those skill sets and can, by the way, shoot 38% from three-point land? The NBA likes that type of player, and that's why he's getting the attention that he is. We know Quentin isn't a finished product. He still certainly needs to gain some strength, and that's normal because, again, he's a freshman. But, it's one of those areas that working with a guy like Adam Fletcher can clearly help. He's going to go up against the physicality of the Big Ten Conference. And if he can show himself to perform well when it comes to the physicality in the Big Ten Conference, that's as close as you're going to get to be able to also compete in the NBA, right? Look, the Nike Academy is filled with talent. AAU basketball, that can be physical. The Big Ten basketball, that is in its own entirely different tier. He's going to get screened by grown men. You're going to have bigger guards try to put him in the post and try to back him down. You're going to have wings basically just punch you in the chest as they try to get to the hole. Coleman is going to have an adjustment period. Most freshmen do. And I think that's going to be very important for Illini fans to remember. I just want to be clear again. Let's just not have our expectations so high that Keaton Wagler is the barometer. And Wu said that himself as well. He essentially said it's unfair to expect a Keaton Wagler freshman season. And of course, Wagler was special. And, it's not like you can just take out Wagler and put in Coleman and say, okay, you're the next freshman. Now go do what Keaton just did. That's just ridiculous. What we want Quentin Coleman to do is just simply become the first Quentin Coleman. And the good part about all this is I think the roster, the way it's constructed, is going to allow Quentin to do exactly that. On last year's team, there's a huge amount of responsibility placed on Wagler. Coleman doesn't necessarily have that. And that's what has me kind of fascinated by what his role is going to be on next year's team. Just look around him. It's a very veteran basketball team. You've got guys who've played tons of basketball. Coleman isn't coming to Champaign to rescue Illinois. He doesn't need to lead the team in scoring or take every important shot. He doesn't even need to necessarily start immediately, though I think he will. All he needs to do is to make the right plays to help Illinois win. And for a player who's shown that his best traits are his competitiveness, rebounding, toughness, and unselfishness, well, I think that's a really good setup. There's a weird freedom that comes from when you have less pressure. Sometimes the most difficult situation for a talented freshman is being told immediately, hey, you are the guy. And then all of a sudden, every mistake matters. Every shooting slump becomes a story, and every bad game becomes, well, maybe he's not ready. I don't think Coleman is going to have to deal with that. If he scores, 8 points, but grabs 7 rebounds while he plays solid defense, fantastic. I think Illinois has enough offense around him. If he scores 15, even better. And all of a sudden, if there's a game where he breaks out and he gets 20 in one night, well, now you've got something. And that's how you let his confidence develop organically. Again, I do think his role could help his NBA case, right? You'd think the best way to become a first-round draft pick is to dominate the basketball, but maybe not necessarily. NBA teams aren't just drafting based on collegiate statistics. They're projecting roles, right? They want to see, can you defend? Can you shoot? Can you make the right decisions? Do you compete? Well, Coleman potentially checks off a lot of those boxes. So he's not a guy who needs to average the 18 points that Keaton Wagler averaged last year. If he can produce an efficient 10 to 12 points per game while rebounding, defending, shooting, and making winning plays, I think I understand why his name keeps getting brought up in NBA conversation. Again, speaking of the NBA, this is the fun part, right? Could Quentin Coleman actually become the Illini's next one-and-done NBA draft prospect? I'm not predicting it. I want to be clear about that. I haven't quite decided. It's hard to decide until you've actually watched him play. Once he plays a college basketball game, then maybe we'll kind of get a better idea. We don't know how quickly all this stuff is going to translate. But I think the point is that it's not a crazy thing to say, especially after with Jeremy Wu saying that NBA guys are already looking at him. He's got those NBA traits and those NBA skills. this is just simply what college basketball is now, right? You enter the season thinking, interesting freshman, maybe a 2 or 3 year guy. And then November happens and you notice something, and then it's December, and now he's on mock drafts, and then it's January and he's moving into early first round contention. That's kind of what we just went through with Keaton Wildler. Maybe that's the same sort of thing we're going to see with Quentin. But the point is, it's all about development. And there's no better place if you are a guard like Quentin and the skills that Quentin has than Champaign, Illinois. If there's a single program out there that has the blueprint to develop you and get you ready for the NBA, it's Brad Underwood. Now, it's just a matter of, can he get it done at the same pace as Keaton did? Hopefully, that pressure is not going to be there for him. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you will receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games. Whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league, every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before the first pitch. Sometimes it's your favorite hitter who's on a hot streak, or maybe just a pitching matchup that you really like, or maybe there's just a ballpark where the ball flies. Just remember that you can make your pick right at FanDuel.com. Join all the action. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a home run. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. Once again, I want to appreciate all of you who've been patient with me. I'm in the middle of a cross-country move, and so the backdrop isn't exactly as appealing as I probably want it to be if you're watching this on YouTube, but give me about a week. I've already ordered some backdrop pieces. Hopefully, they'll be arriving soon, and maybe by next week, I'll have things looking a little sleeker for you. Before I let you guys go, I did want to name 5 Illini, or mention that 5 Illini were named to the 2026 Senior Bowl Top 300. Fighting Illini defensive back Matthew Bailey, wide receiver Hudson Clement, quarterback Caden Hauser, Jake Renfro, and defensive back Xavier Scott were named among the top players eligible for the 2027 NFL Draft as part of the Panini Senior Bowl Top 300 list, which was released on Thursday. The Panini Senior Bowl is widely regarded as the preeminent college football all-star game and the first stage of the NFL draft process. Each year, the Senior Bowl brings the nation's top prospects to Mobile, Alabama, providing NFL personnel from all 32 teams with an opportunity to evaluate players in a competitive environment. The 2027 Panini Senior Bowl is on Saturday, January 30th, 2027 at Hancock Whitney Stadium in Mobile, Alabama. All right, so good luck to those guys. All right, if you want to continue this conversation, please join us in the Talk Illini Discord, where things are certainly starting to heat up once again. We've got almost 500 members there. On your way out, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And I hope you guys all stay safe this weekend. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.